Welcome back, everybody. It is 1:50 p.m. October 17th, 2017. That is Eastern Time. Alright, I missed you guys. Glad we're back. Alright, we got some stuff to talk about. We might have a round 2 for the UK and Ireland, unfortunately, and that is because of our invest here, which actually is not even an invest anymore. And we'll talk about that. Now, the reasons for this is because we've had a shear wind event going on. If you see where my mouse is, this was our Invest 92L that we were watching. At one point, this was at as high as 50% over 5 days and 40% over 2 days. Now, we were waiting to see if the wind shear would allow this thing to form. And according to the data and according to what we have as of right now, it's not going to form. You can see it here. Kind of looks like someone's sitting on the scanner copy machine at the office, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, so this is, yes, Invest 92L. Like I said, no longer an invest, but this seems to want to be pulled away by the jet stream. As you can see here with this wall here, this is the wall that we were basically relying on to take this system away, whether it formed or not. If this became a hurricane or not, it looked to be that this wall of the jet stream here was going to take this away up to the Atlantic. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going right towards the UK and Ireland. Once again, Ireland would be first, and then you get into the UK areas of North Ireland, Scotland, and so on and so forth. So we're going to take a look at that. Again, this is right here where I'm circling with my mouse. You can see here is our wall of pressure coming from the jet stream. Very deep dip in the jet stream this week is currently passing through the Gulf and over Florida. We actually talked about this happening and what it was going to do to this invest, but we have a few other things I want you to take a look at here. One being to the bottom right here. Sorry if it's hard to see my mouse, but right here, you can see that this is also dealing with a wind shear event, but it is starting to pick up. We are getting some building of storms here. We got another area right here that's building, and then another area by the Leeward Islands. So we have 1, 2, 3 areas right here. All, if you notice, all the top layer clouds are being pushed from west to east. Usually we have the opposite movement in this area, but we have a very big, super high pressure in the Atlantic Ocean, which is basically almost the entire Atlantic Ocean, only leaving the edges of this big bubble, if you want to picture it that way, for movement. So everything in here is basically staying put, and then everything that's on the outside of it is going to travel either up and around it, or as you can see here, west to east, back along this way, and up and around this way. So we are keeping an eye on this only because once this pressure lets up, if this begins to form, we could see this begin to roll to the west through the Leeward Islands and then possibly become a system. We still have plenty of warm water here, guys, and a lot of warm water here in the Caribbean as well. And I'm sure it goes without saying, we have another area right here. This is pretty much where, if you remember, Hurricane Nate formed, was right in this area. This is very warm water still. I have our current warm water chart we can look at right here. Zoom in a little bit for you. You can see even during the time of Nate, this color here was about the same. So Nate formed in some of these green and blue colors and then moved up, and then as we remember, it shot the gap here, went into the Gulf. Now below Cuba is still plenty of warm water. There's still plenty of time for storms to form here. In fact, if you notice the thumbnail, guys, according to Tropical Tidbits, we may be dealing with a significant storm or a hurricane on Halloween, and by Halloween it's projected to be right around the Bahamas. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the chart. You can see it forming down here. It moves up through Cuba. It may touch Florida, and then it ends up right around here on Halloween. So we're going to definitely keep an eye on that. Of course, subject to change, being that we are about 2 weeks away from Halloween, maybe a little bit more, but still definitely worth talking about. So we're going to get into that as well. And really quick before we move on, if you pay attention to this area right here we were just looking at, this actually formed very quickly. As of 30 hours ago, I want to say, this was nothing but a couple little storm puffs that we usually look at when we're looking for storms to form and start clinging to each other to form those tropical depressions. But check this thing out. This thing is like almost a perfect circle right now. It's got that really weird, like hairy looking attributes to it with those lighter blue colors, almost the greens. Very circular storm. It looks to be moving east to west, maybe a slight north movement to it. If this thing does end up rolling up to the north, that's when it's going to be something to watch as far as the Caribbean and the Gulf goes. But it looks to me like this thing may break up over the land here, or it may pass through and reform as a system in the Pacific. So we will also watch this. Now, so just for my count now, we have our invest here, which we're just calling an invest for conversation purposes because we are going to talk about this with Ireland and the UK. Then we have this system here that we're definitely going to keep an eye on. It looks to be growing quickly, but it is dealing with the wind shear because of the Bermuda Atlantic. And then we have this bubble going on right here. Not to mention the jet stream front that is pulling through is actually bringing yet some more rain into Florida. So expect that if you're not already feeling it. Some of Central Florida is already getting rain from this, so still very active here in the Caribbean and in the Gulf. We get a little bit of a better look of it here on our water vapor chart. Okay, so this is the invest that I'm talking about that is now projected to be pushed up by the jet stream. As you can see, that wall coming down, southeast movement sort of. And then once this thing gets picked up by it, that's when it's going to pick it up and bring it out into this direction. And that's when the UK and Ireland are going to be in trouble with this. Now, we'll look at that on Tropical Tidbits, but I just wanted you to see this first to get an idea of these storms blowing up here. This is that second area that we just mentioned that looks like it is forming. It's gaining a little bit more density in these storms. Again, you can see the shear winds rolling from west to east over top of it. That is keeping it from forming quicker, I would say. You can see a lot of these storms being peeled off and pushed to the east. And then right here, that system I'm telling you about that looked like a perfect circle, almost like a furry ball looking thing, is also blowing up with a lot of moisture and a lot of storms here. So just to get a better idea of what we're looking at, and the front of the jet stream here pushing everything out back into the ocean. So nothing will really be an issue as far as the U.S. goes until this deep U in the jet stream pushes all the way out into the Atlantic. Alright, I have it set up here on Tropical Tidbits. You can see here that this was Ophelia, so we're about 2 days in the past right now. But I want you to pay attention to a few things. Now, the UK just finished dealing with this system, and in some ways it's still, the backside of it is still an issue as of right now. A lot of wind, a lot of rain. There were gusts over 100 miles an hour in some of these areas, so that was a big deal. It still is a big deal. I read reports of some damage. Some of you in the comments I know are from the UK. My friend Deb down there, hopefully we can get an update from you soon if you have access to the internet, and just give us an idea and let us know how everything's going in that area. But once again, guys, if I back up a little bit, you're going to notice that just as Ophelia passes over this area, our invest that was down here that we were expecting to be a threat to the U.S. if the jet stream hadn't pushed it out, which it's currently doing. I want you to watch this. Now, as I move forward, you can see Ophelia passes over the UK there. There is another system that's being pulled by the jet stream. It doesn't look to be that crazy. As you can see, it breaks up right before it gets towards the UK and Ireland. But as I move forward, there's our invest right here. You can see it. Now, this is going into the future. This is current time right now, the 17th. Now, watching this area here, as it goes up and gets pulled into the jet stream, it actually forms during its movement. And there it is right there. So now it's a low, 999 pressure. It follows the jet stream according to the projections. And then it gets pushed, and look at that. It forms right into another big system. Now, I don't know if this is going to be compact enough to be an actual named hurricane, but we can clearly see those dark purple colors, very serious weather in there. It's a low system, 961 as far as pressure. That is capable of sustaining a Category 3 hurricane, guys. You got to look at those pressures. Whenever the pressure drops, the wind speeds rise. But because we're in cool water and because of the aid of the jet stream, we're going to have a very big wide wind field here. And as of right now, it's projected to hit those same exact areas, maybe a little bit to the south, around October 21st. And then if you notice right behind it, there's another system that hopefully breaks up as shown here before it hits the UK once again. So the UK is in line for a lot of interesting weather over the next 2 weeks. So we're going to keep a very close eye on that stuff. Again, those of you from the UK and Ireland in the comments section, please let me know how things are going there. And I'm going to keep you posted on this stuff. But now, as far as the US goes, we have a few things to talk about. Now, this chart I show you guys pretty often. This is a mimic chart, it's called. There is a bigger version of this, a global version, but I'm using this for our current examples, but I want you to notice that we still have our clear warm water belt. This is warmer water, this is water vapor and wind chart, but I want you to notice the dense colors. Now, that one system we're watching down in this area has a little bit of density to it. We still need to see what kind of path that's going to follow if the wind shear lifts off enough. And once again, the big Bermuda pressure is almost covering the entire Atlantic Ocean. So really the only movement you're going to see is like a track around the edges of the Atlantic, at least for now. That will change, and you can see here is that defined jet stream dip that we're talking about that was not going to allow this invest that is currently projected to go up to the UK. This wall of pressure here was not going to allow it to be an effect on the U.S. whatsoever, which is a good thing. But looking into the future, guys, we may be dealing with something around Halloween. Now, I want you to pay attention to the dense colors down here. This is the warm water of the Caribbean again. We got warm water still in the Gulf. So this is very prime time stuff for hurricanes still. Just because we don't have any invests or disturbances right now, that can change overnight, and we all know that. So I just want you to get a good look at this chart to understand about the water. Plus, we have our current warm water chart that shows clear warm water all over the Caribbean to the south of Cuba and a little bit going into the Gulf. So with that said, I'm going to go back to tropical tidbits and we're going to check this out. Alright, back to tropical tidbits. Now, the reason I'm showing you this warm water area is because we're going to see two lows here. You already see this one popping up here in the warmer of the water we have in the Caribbean, and then you're going to see another low pop up here, and they basically merge with each other, and then what happens after that is the interesting part. That's when we're dealing with the timing of around Halloween. Right now, we're on October 26th, so again, guys, this is subject to change. But the reason I'm showing this is because we have a constant high pressure in the Bermuda here. You can see this big ring. This is all high pressure, and then we have the H right in the middle. So as of right now, if you notice, every system that forms is wrapping around over top of this ring, or like we showed in the other charts, some of those top layer clouds are moving under the ring this way. So again, that's just to describe the high pressure going on. Now, as I move forward, you can see this system wraps around the high pressure, so you can see how systems tend to not go into high pressures. They are forced around one side or the other. And now we're at the 27th, and now by almost the 28th, we're beginning to see this system forming just south of Cuba. As I move forward, this is the 28th. Here is the 29th. So by the 29th, we may possibly have a hurricane to the south of Cuba, crossing over the center of it under South Florida towards the Bahamas. And then by Halloween, check out that pressure number, 968. That could be a Category 3/Category 4 storm as far as pressure readings go. Now, if it crosses over Cuba like that, I don't think that'll happen quickly. It'll need more time to form right around this area. But the more important thing to know is that the Caribbean is still capable of forming these storms, according to the GFS, this far into the future. So that is something to take note of. And again, if we still have this very high pressure going on in the Atlantic, not allowing anything to move out into the middle of the Atlantic, that's going to leave two options, one of which is almost not impossible, but very unlikely, and that would be for this storm to form and then be pushed underneath the bubble and back to the east. I don't see that happening, so if the pressure does stay true in this Bermuda Atlantic area, the big pressure bubble, the only place this storm's going to have to go once it passes over Cuba is up north, and that's going to put the East Coast at risk. Now, again, very far into the future, guys, but still, we are possibly looking at a hurricane forming before Halloween, but then being the biggest threat to the U.S. on Halloween. Now, again, if I back up here, we're so far into the future now that this thing could easily form and go right into the Gulf as well. So over the next couple days, we're going to watch this chart, especially the GFS, to see how it adds on to this prediction, whether it's going to go through Cuba and then reform on the other side by the Bahamas, putting the East Coast at risk, or if it's going to form and shoot that gap again, or even clip Cuba and move into the Gulf where there's still warm water. Now, you got to keep in mind, once it gets anywhere to the east or north of the Bahamas, this water here is a lot cooler than the Gulf water. So if this thing does move into the Gulf, I see that as more of a risk as far as the coastal states go in the Gulf than it would be if this thing came out, reformed, and then affected the East Coast. Because as far as it travels north, it's going to get weaker and weaker. This water is getting very cool around here. So we have a lot to look at, guys, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get this update out. I have a lot of stuff to deal with. I am in the middle of almost done with a fire update for Napa and California and a few other things. So with that said, guys, I appreciate you sticking with me. We're going to keep an eye on this storm. We may be dealing with a hurricane on Halloween. Don't quote me on it yet. Let's just watch the data and see how this thing develops. All right, guys, I will talk to you all very soon. Hope you had a great day. Thank you very much.